As we continue our exploration of InDesign's interactive applications, we need to talk about animations. Now, in InDesign, animations by default will play on a page load. That means that as soon as you open up a page on an application that has been created in InDesign, the animation will start playing. However, you can change those settings to obey button clicks or other triggers, whether it is rolling over, clicking on, or, like I said a second ago, through a button interaction. In order, you can play all these things in specific orders. So you can play them in the order that they were created, or you can change the order in which things play as they animate through the page, or you can animate everything at the same time. So you have a way of controlling all of these different interactions or all these different events based on how you want your application to play out. So keeping that in mind, let's go ahead and create a new file. And I'm going to be using the same setting that I've been using for the other ones. So let's just go ahead and create for the iPad. And in this, I am going to be creating two things. The first one is going to be a graphic. I'm going to use probably a rectangle tool. Let's just go ahead and use the rectangle tool. And I'm just going to create myself a rectangle up here. I want to give it a, let me switch my view, my workspace to essentials so that I have my properties on the right hand side really quick. And then I want to go ahead and give that rectangle a color. So I want to make that, let's say, actually I can create a color at this point. Or I can go ahead and open up my colors palette. And from here, go ahead and choose a specific color that I can then save into my swatches if that's what I choose to do. So, I mean, there's different ways of entering that specific entering color on this. So let's say, for example, if I want to choose RGB CMYK colors, this is where I would choose it from. Now let's go ahead and choose a color here. I'm gonna use no specific color. I'm just choosing a color right now. What I want to do at this point as well is I want to modify the actual object that I do to a rounded rectangle shape. So if I do that, I have now control over the actual corner of my box. So that gives me more of a button look for what I'm trying to create. You can increase or decrease the amount of cornering value by going over here under this corner option. And if I go and increase that, I can go ahead and create a rounder option or a less round option depending on what value you enter. So if I enter a value of 0, you'll notice that my rectangle should go back to being a rectangle. So I wanted to keep it around 24 pixels in this instance, and that way I get me a button that looks like a button. Now I want to make this a button in just a second, but first I want to start an animation based on interacting with this button. So for creating animations, let's go back now to my workspace for digital publishing. Now, if you don't want to have to be switching around and you want to maintain all of these buttons open, all these menus, all you need to do is go to Window, Interactive, and then open them up one at a time. And then go ahead and keep on stacking them one on top of the other so that you maintain them open, and you can that way keep your essentials workspace open and have all these interactive menus available as well. So with that said, what I want to do now is let me just go ahead and import an image really quick. I'm going to import any of these images. Let's import this little image right here. Whoops, had that box selected, sorry. So let's go ahead and work with this image. And I'm just simply going to place that here. I just resized that. It could be anything. It could be a title if you want to. It could be an image, whatever it is that you want to be animating through the button. To apply an animation to this, you will go into the animations panel, which is this one with the 3 little dots. So if you click on that, you will notice that by default, there's no animation applied to this. And there's a series of settings that you can apply to that specific file, to what you are trying to animate. So the first things first, you need to choose what kind of an animation you want it to do. And that you find that under the presets. So if you click on presets, you have options, many options for what you can do with animation. So there's plenty of actual animations preset for you here. You can also animate on a path if you need to, and I'll show you that in just a few. So for now, what I want to do is I want to do a quick fade in for this thing. So if I choose fade in, notice what happens to the animations panel. When I click on that, the animations panel becomes alive. Basically, there's a lot of options that you can work with, and then there's a drop down here for properties, which expands the actual panel. Now, if every time I roll over this area here, I will see a playback of what that animation is going to do, which is basically just a simple, or if I click on it, it will show me what the animation will be for this, which is a quick fade in. Okay. So that's all I need. Now I can control how long that animation takes by changing the duration of the event. In this case, it's a 1 second animation. You can make it longer or less than 1 second. You can also tell it how many times to play or whether you want to keep on looping this animation constantly after you activate it. Okay. Currently, the animation is playing on the event. The actual event that is triggering this is the on page load, meaning as soon as the page loads, as soon as the application opens, or as soon as the application gets to this page, that animation will play. However, we can go ahead and change that instead of being on a page load to being on clicking on a button. So that's what we're about to do. Before I go ahead and activate this, let me go ahead and show you what this what other options you have within this animation tab. So if you look under speed, you have the option for as is from the preset. You can have linear animation, which is none. You can do ECs in, ECs out, or ECs in and out, which is similar to the way that it worked when we were working on Animate. So but you notice a lot of things that are very similar, that you see similarities between the way you were programming in Animate or the way of thinking in terms of programming in that environment versus the way this program allows you to do things. So you're working with events, you're working with ECs in or ECs out. So all those things are very similar. You also have the ability to change other properties such as rotation, scaling, and when you move things around on a path, you will also be working on a position change. So basically the properties are the same as the ones that you were controlling in Animate. You also have the ability here to say how do you want to animate this thing, and this is probably the most difficult portion of things to understand within the animation window in InDesign. But I will show you how to do that in just a second. What the differences between among these three are. And then you can tell it whether you want this to be hidden before it starts or until it's animated, like it says here, and then hide after animation if you want to. Down here, you also have the option to look at proxies and to change the timing on that particular animation in terms of the global animation. So if you have other animations attached to this, it is that timing window, which is basically the same thing as this window here. This little button is the same thing as that button here. It'll open up a different panel, and we'll discuss that panel in the next video. And then over here is for where you convert something, a line or a vector graphic into a motion path. And we'll talk about those in the next video as well. So for now, what I want to do is I want to make this fade in when I click on this button. So to do so, I needed to turn this into a button, but I haven't yet. This graphic here is not a button yet. So one way to actually apply that, to make that a button without actually making it a button, is from that event trigger area within the animation of the graphic that I'm about to fade in. If I go under events, you'll notice that I have a target button option here. And what that means is when I click on that, you'll notice that my mouse changes into a target. And if I go over to that graphic or to that object and I click on it, it turns it into a button, and it opens up my buttons window. And then it tells me, hey, you're about to turn this into a button, give it a name. So I'll call it fade. I'll give it a button name that is descriptive. Okay, so BTN for button. And then the animation for this has already been preset into that. So from the, I don't have to go into the actions menu to choose the animation or to choose the event that will, or what is going to trigger this animation, what action. So it's already been pre-done for me, and it says the animation will be to animate whatever animation has been attached to that particular graphic. So I don't have to do anything else. I can create a rollover state if I want to at this point. I'm not going to, but basically everything that we talked about buttons at this point applies. The difference being, the only difference being is that it made it a button automatically, and that it points directly to what action is going to happen automatically. So I don't have to do anything. I don't have to add an action to this. Let me go back to the graphic really quick. Open up its animation window, and you'll notice that now it says both on page load and on release. Obviously, on release refers to the button action, which is what I want. But on that page load, I don't want that. I don't want this to fade in as soon as I load the page. I don't want to see this when I load the page. So to remove that on page load, let's click on that drop-down menu, and you'll see the possible events that will trigger that action, which are on page load, which is when the page loads, as I explained. On page click is if I click anywhere on the page. On click self means if I click on the object itself to turn it on. And on rollover, which means if I roll over the actual object. So I don't want any of those to be the actions. So all I need to do to deselect it is just simply click on the little check mark, and you'll notice that it no longer activates when the page loads. Is only activated when I click on the button event, which is what I want. So with this set up this way, what I want to do is I want to go to the EPUB interactivity menu, and I want to test this. I want to run this test to see what happens. You'll notice that I see my button appear, but I see nothing here. When I click on the button, that graphic fades in, and that's exactly what I want. So every time I click on it, it will fade in. Let me go ahead and stop this preview, go back to my document, and you'll notice that I can now go ahead and modify this if I want to. For example, if I don't want that animation to be a fade in, I want it to be something else. Let's say I want it to fly in from the right, let's say. You'll notice that flying in from the right automatically creates a path, a motion path for me. And that motion path is the motion in which my object will be moving. You will notice that at the end of my path, there's a little arrowhead, which indicates that my motion will be moving from this point to this point. That means that that is the path that the object will take. This path, this motion path, just like any other path in any of the other programs that we work with, is a Bezier curve. What that means for you is that you can affect it with your pen tool. So if I go to my pen tool and I go to this point here, let's go to the white arrow tool and click on that point. I can go ahead and, let's say, for example, using the pen tool, click, and using my pen tool and pressing the Alt key on the keyboard, I can modify the path curvature for that particular path. So if I create a handle for it, I can go ahead and move that. I can also add extra point. Let me actually select it again. Click on this, click on the object. I can go ahead and click on this and add extra points with the pen tool if I want to. So I can go ahead, I didn't click on the actual path this time, but let's go ahead and have it selected. Let me click on the path, and you'll notice that by clicking with the pen tool, I can go ahead and add those extra points. I can then now move that point if I want to. I can create more points on the path and change the position of the points if I need to modify the actual path itself. Okay, let me select it. Select the path. So the process is I select the graphic, then I click on the path to select the path, and then I choose the white arrow tool to modify as necessary. So my motion now will follow that path, but you'll notice that the arrow remains here, meaning that it is animating from this point to that point. And nothing else has changed on my animation settings for this particular graphic. It's still waiting for it to happen when I click on the mouse. Timing is the same, and I can go back and change the timing for everything else if I need to. Let me go ahead and preview this. And if I click, you will notice that now my animation follows the path that I had drawn with the pen. or that I had modified. Now, let's say, for example, I don't want that. So let's go ahead and open up the animation. I want to set up this. I want to select that. And once I select the path, I delete it. Now, you'll notice that that deletes the path from the actual object, but you'll notice that the object retains the little icon, which means it is still set for animation. So I can go ahead and use my pen tool and say, for example, I want to click and drag and create my own path. Now with that done, I'm going to shift select the graphic and I'm going to apply by using this button here, convert to motion path. So once I do that, the actual graphic takes on that specific path, and then I can modify the path as necessary. So you'll see, let's go ahead and I keep on deselecting the actual graphic, sorry. Let me go ahead and select the path, use my arrow tool, and there you go. So I can go ahead and change my path to whatever I want. I can modify this to my requirements for my animation. And so that was a path that I drew with the pen. Now let me go ahead and test this. And when I play this back, my animation is now based on the path that I drew with the pen. So you have, it's extremely flexible how you can create the motion paths or the animations when it comes to motion. You can create your own paths if you want to. You can control the timing for them by increasing or decreasing the duration. You can tell it how many times you want it to happen, and you can use either triggers that include page actions or button actions. Notice that there's quite a lot of options that you can work from on your on that drop down menu for presets. So you have things such as fade in, fade out, fly in from different places, grow, which will increase the size, move left, move right. You know, you have a spring effects if you want to make something look like it's bouncing. You also have bouncing effects. So I mean, there's a ton to choose from, and I suggest that you go play with them to see what fits your needs for your specific projects. In the next video, I'm going to show you the difference between what the animate to current location, from current location and from current appearance and to current appearance means, which, like I said, is probably the only thing that is, it's not difficult to understand, but it's the one thing that I see most people getting stuck on when working with the animation panel. And then we'll also talk about timing at that point.